All right, so since the news that Zac Alley is taking the West Virginia defensive coordinator job, leaving Brent Venables, his mentor, right, the guy that he has called a second father, after he leaves him, all Oklahoma fans, including myself, are asking, well, what's next at this position for Oklahoma? How do you fill the defensive coordinator's shoes in a year where you feel like Brent Venables is coaching for his job? And it feels like it might be hard to get an elite defensive coordinator to want to come in and potentially work alongside Brent for maybe 1 year. So I've got I've got two names. One I want to give you guys is more of like wishful thinking, but if it happened, man, it could really boost the program and help stabilize it a little bit. The second one, you've heard it. We got to talk about it, though. Before we do it, as always, join the discussion. Jump in the comments below. Give me your thoughts about Zac Alley leaving. 65% of you that watch these videos are not subscribed, and we're trying to get to 15,000 subscribers. Probably not going to do it by the end of the year, but I would like to get to it by the end of January. So if you're one of the 63% that aren't subscribed, do me a favor, help me out, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. Let me know that you guys are here, that you guys are watching. And yeah, so the first name that I want to give you guys, don't laugh at me, don't ridicule me in the chat. Again, I know it's wishful thinking here, but it's a name that if it happened, it makes a lot of sense. And it's Bob Stoops, right? He was a defensive coordinator under Spurrier before he came to Oklahoma. He had really good defenses at Oklahoma, although he had hired Brent Venables to kind of be his defensive coordinator for the majority of those defenses that he had. Bob Stoops, I think, is an elite defensive mind. And you look at what he's doing down with the Renegades, it would make sense. And I think, you look at Bob Stoops retiring from Oklahoma at the time he did, it made a lot of sense at the time. You thought you had a really good guy in Lincoln Riley who could be around for a long time. He had the energy to go out and do all the recruiting and the tasks that a head coach is tasked with. Versus if Bob Stoops came in as the defensive coordinator for Oklahoma, he really just is running a defense, and as the defensive coordinator, you recruit some of the better defensive recruits, but let your position coaches do that legwork. It actually, I don't think would be that hard of a job. And he could return to Oklahoma, and him and Brent, I think, would work really well together. And I think it would help stabilize the program a little bit. It would give Brent somebody to kind of lean on when he has questions real time about being a head coach. It makes a lot of sense. Now, probably not going to happen, for all being realistic, but it's just a name I wanted to throw out there because crazier things have happened in college football. But the name that everybody's seen is Wes Goodwin. And who is Wes Goodwin? And he's the Clemson defensive coordinator right now, got the job in 22 after Brent Venables came to Oklahoma. But he is another protege of Brent Venables. And so you look at it in 22, when he took over the defense, they ranked top 25 nationally in points allowed per game, 22nd at 20.9. Rushing yards allowed per game, 13th at 102.7, and yards allowed per carry at 9th with 3.25. Sacks, they were tied for 4th. Tackles for loss, and then passes defended, 9th at 77. So you look at Wes Goodwin, I think he works really good with Brent Venables. I think being on his own, I don't know if he was quite ready for that task yet because you've seen the defense at Clemson maybe slip just a little bit. But with Brent Venables, Wes Goodwin, I think, would work out really, really, really well. And again, it's just another one of those Clemson guys that you get on staff. He can work well with Todd Bates, Miguel Chavis, Brandon Hall. Cornerbacks coach, I actually don't know if Valai will be here much longer, and I have some names at the end of the video that we need to talk about. But when you look at Wes Goodwin, he's obviously an elite recruiter. I think a lot of people saw him win Sammy Brown, the 5-star linebacker in the last cycle that Oklahoma was in second place for when he ended up committing to Clemson. And Sammy Brown, a lot of people thought could be the next Boz at Oklahoma. He goes out and recruits a guy like that, a guy like Peter Woods and Vic Burley. Two of those guys at one point were 5-star interior defensive linemen, but you also look at a guy like Amari Adams, who he got in 23. So he is an elite recruiter. He does it on the defensive line as well, which I think Oklahoma fans want to see more 5-star recruits come in through that. So I think the big thing here is to not get caught up in the recruiting, because I think we did that with Todd Bates as well and said, oh, well, Todd Bates landed all these 5 stars at Clemson. He's going to do the same thing at Oklahoma. you got to remember the geographical locations of Clemson versus Oklahoma and see the guys that Clemson was landing that were 5-stars, right? They were coming out of the state of Georgia, the state of South Carolina, some out of the state of Florida. I think it's a little easier at Clemson to recruit those 5-stars to your school when you're in close proximity to those states versus at Oklahoma, where although, yes, you're in the SEC and you get to travel to some of these in-state schools, it's going to be a little bit harder for the parents and the players to want to actually get to Oklahoma. So just keep that in mind. Let's not get too wrapped up in what they do in recruiting 5-stars, but they do recruit well. And I think that is something that can translate, right? Recruiting well, just not recruiting the 5-stars. Maybe it can happen, but not holding my hopes up. So if you bring in Wes Goodwin, I think it's a pretty good option. I think it probably ties over. Wes Goodwin's obviously not going to be getting a head coaching job anytime soon, so he's probably going to be here for 3 or 4, maybe even longer in terms of years. Remember, defensive coaches, they don't just go out and grab head coaching jobs right away. It takes them a little bit longer to establish themselves to be able to get there. I mean, look how long it took Brent to really get in consideration for head coaching jobs. It took until like 2020, 2021 for him to really start getting in consideration. Now, you heard me mention, I think Jay Valai won't be here very much longer. Jay Valai, this is, I think, one of his longer stops that he's been at. Jay Valai's done a great job, I think, at Oklahoma, especially in terms of recruiting. A lot of people are out on the development part with him, but I think he's done a good job on recruiting. Jay Valai, I think, wants the defensive coordinator job at Oklahoma, and I don't think Oklahoma is going to offer it to him. If you look at anybody that's currently in Oklahoma right now internally that they would offer it to, Brandon Hall, just because he's done it before. He's done it at a high level. Jay Valai, I think, probably ends up going somewhere else. Probably trying to elevate his status as a defensive coach. And so the question is, well, who do you replace him with? And there's 2 names out there that really intrigue you as a cornerbacks coach, people that you need to watch. The first one is Jamil Ade, who is currently with the Buffalo Bills, been with the Miami Hurricanes, been with the Georgia Bulldogs, and recruited and developed at a really high level at Georgia. I mean, landed 4 or 5-stars at his time there, developed all those guys, including Jaheim Singletary, into NFL draft talent, got Marvin Jones Jr. there. Now, Marvin Jones Jr. obviously is not in the league yet, but I think a lot of people expect him there. Also recruited Julian Humphrey there. You guys just saw that he entered the portal this offseason. So that's a name that maybe you kind of file away, watch. He's done a really good job in the collegiate ranks before. Another one you got to watch, though, and this is an intriguing one. It comes from a Big 12 school, but it's Hank Poteet from Iowa State. Now, on the recruiting aspect side, obviously, you're not going to see some big boom in recruiting because, well, his time was at Wisconsin, then Iowa State. Like, not necessarily schools where you just see cornerbacks coaches land those 5-star talented guys. But this is a guy that I think has developed really well and had a very solid cornerbacks room. He had 2 cornerbacks this year in all of college football that were ranked in the top 100 according to PFF, having total defensive grades of 81.2 and 79.3, playing over 1,000 snaps combined. And you look at those guys and you look at John Tez Williams, who's 5'11". You look at Darian Porter, who is 6'4", and you look at a guy like Miles Purchase, who was also 5'11". Those are the 3 guys that primarily played a lot for Poteet at Iowa State. You look at it, they only allowed 46 receptions this year, and on those 46 receptions, only allowed 3 touchdowns. And if you take away Purchase, who was outside of the top 100 cornerbacks in the country, they only allowed 1 touchdown between their 2 best corners. So Poteet is a guy that I think has recruited okay, but has developed at a phenomenal level out at Iowa State. And I think could come in here to Oklahoma and take what Oklahoma currently has at the cornerback position and really make this an elite room for Oklahoma and maybe start to get Oklahoma back into that conversation of one of the best cornerback rooms in all of college football. So obviously with Zac Alley leaving, it's not ideal. And the way that it happened, I understand Oklahoma fans are upset. It pisses me off too. But I think there's some good things coming for Oklahoma. Obviously, you want to find out who's going to be calling the defense. It sounds like Skowski might get elevated to the linebackers coach, which would be well-deserved on his part. He was in Brent Venables' system before. He's been with Brent Venables as an assistant, and I just think that guy fits that role. But you look at the defensive coordinator position, Wes Goodwin and Brandon Hall, probably your two front runners. Like I said, maybe quiet, wishful thinking, dark horse, Bob Stoops. It would just make so much sense, and it would be so much fun for Oklahoma fans, although it probably won't happen. And then for the cornerbacks coach to replace Jay Valai, again, Hank Poteet and Jalil Ade, who used to be he's currently at Buffalo Bills, but used to be at Georgia and Miami. So jump in the comments below, join the discussion, give me your guys' thoughts on what Oklahoma needs to do at the defensive coordinator position. If you guys have not already, make sure you guys hit that like and hit that subscribe button.